Namaste, my name is Topendra Oli, a SONSIK member from 19th EC, and today we invited a speaker who can share about voice-phishing. This event aims to raise awareness about the growing threat of voice-phishing, particularly for foreigners living in South Korea. According to data from the Ministry of Justice and the Financial Supervisory Service of South Korea, a total number of 248,000 cases of money transfer scam were reported between 2017 and 2021 AD. This webinar will feature a speaker who is also a victim of voice phishing. He will share his personal experience and the steps he took to protect himself from such scams. The speaker will discuss about how to be safe from voice phishing and give tips and advice on identifying and avoiding these types of scam, as well as what to do if you suspect that you have been a victim. And within this webinar, I want to request to everyone, if you have any question, you can message or comment on our Facebook page, or you can directly message on our Zoom live. So please welcome the speaker, and he is a Parveen Yadav from India, and currently he is a PhD student from Sagang University, Seoul, South Korea. Please welcome him.
Namaste, everyone. I'm Praveen Yadav, a student of Sagang University, doing my PhD as a second-year student, and my major is chemical and biomolecular engineering. And I'm an assistant professor in India. And on an official academic leave, I came here on a government project of South Korean government, and for doing my PhD here. So this is my small introduction. And without wasting your precious time anymore, I'll just share my screen and start my presentation. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is visible to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the presentation topic for me for today's day is the voice phishing, a growing concern for foreigners who are particularly living in South Korea. I'll just come up with some brief introduction of the voice phishing. So something which the word which you are familiar with is the cybercrime. So it is, using, committing some crimes using some electronic communication and the information system. And these crimes are basically don't have any borders. It is committed even from one country to another, and they can be specifically categorized into three parts. One is the crime that are done through the internet sources and to steal your personal information. The other is the online frauds or forgery. And the third is the illegal online content to be shared. Coming to the phishing crimes, so this comes into category of cyber crimes itself, and basically it is an attempt of committing crime by stealing the sensitive information of users, such as the username, password, credentials, credit card, and the other personal information, and by representing these bodies, they represent themselves as some the trustworthy entity, and they do it through some electronic communication, and they represent themselves as some popular social website or some auction site, online payment process, or some IT administration, maybe some job offer, or some similar kind of thing that try to attempt or lure the unsuspecting public who have more positive nature, and they have some less probability of doubting. And phishing is, like I said, it is basically stealing the personal information for particularly committing, achieving the, the fraud or financial scams. And they particularly do it by using the communications like through email, SMS, or phone. And they try to represent themselves in most of the cases, like the third party presentation. And they somehow, their motto is to convince the victims to provide their personal information or credentials or their payment details. I'll give them a short story of phishing, the historical part. It specifically started in 1990s, where there was a very early communication mode famous in America, that is the American online chat room. And from there, they started, the scammers started presenting themselves as the administration of AOL in 1996. And they started stealing the credit card informations of the users by assuring them that by doing so they will get some free AOL access. So, and this crime started growing more and more. And in 2003 it became a very famous scam, where these they tried to be a legitimate site providers of eBay or PayPal. Means their site was fake, but it very much looked like the eBay and PayPal. And they used to scam people by by making their attention towards the payment mode of providing the fund. The other is like, I like I said, from PayPal side, they used to provide the fake or the spoofed emails. And by 2004, they succeeded a lot for providing such, sending such phishing things. And they succeeded enough to particularly target the banking sites and the customers of those banks. Very common mode were in 20s, early 20s. The very common mode was like the pop-up window mode, where by clicking the personal or sensitive information of the user was getting leaked to the scammers, and those users were getting victimized. And like the survey, that was the Verizon survey that was done in 2020. So they also reported the high level of scams, and particularly all the breaches were happening on online source. So out of them, 36% of them were mostly the phishing scams. I'll just introduce, a flow chart for the phishing attackers. What they either try to approach your computer system, or maybe they through telephonic system or through your computer system, they try to steal your personal information. By doing or obtaining these personal information, they then approach or make some loophole in banking security system and try to steal your money from there. So this is how they basically work. The phishing techniques mostly is categorized in the following four ways. One is the link manipulation, where they manipulate the link that we usually click for doing some important, or switching to some another site. So they manipulate those links to reach to their the fraud site. The other way is like filter evasion, where they make the programmings to skip the filter that we use in general. Other is like the website forgery, where they make the fake websites. Or the last one is the phone phishing, which is also called voice phishing, wishing, or smishing. I'll give you one or two examples which have been very famous in the beginning days when the phishing was introduced. So the people, they try to represent themselves as some very senior official of the company, like CEO. And they try to force their employees as sudden they represent that there is some urgent need of the fund transfer, which is absolutely very confidential, and they they say that that situation is very urgent and important, maybe for tax consultation, maybe for merger, maybe some acquisition of something like this, and somehow they convince the employee or the person who is handling these accounts. So they convince somehow that right now, because it is an emergency situation, so he has to avoid the regular protocols, and he has to avoid, and he has to directly come to the process because it is an urgent need, and they don't have time for further verification, authentication, or taking approvals of the other authority members. So like this, they pressurize and somehow convince them. After convincing, they tell him that the further communication will be done by a third person, and this is how they make the communication, and they somehow convince that person, the employee, to transfer that fund to the scammer's account instead of the actual company or the authentic person. The PayPal scam that has been very famous long before. So in this one, they used to send the emails to its users, where they were asking. You can see at the center, they used to ask to click and verify the account, as they have some problem in the account. And you can see a line below of this link, which says, if you choose to ignore our request, you leave us no choice but to temporarily suspend your account. So these kind of threatening and emotional games they play, and somehow try to trap the user or the victim, and they make them victim and try to attempt the scam. Another scam is the US bank scam, where they make a fake website, and they try to they send the emails. When people were clicking on the emails, it was going to this fake website, and people did some transaction, and they lost their money like this. But if you notice in this, uh, by clicking, they will ask for the personal information. And you will see that some of the things that you can notice is like the URL link of this site. So if this was tracked, it was found that it was done somewhere in South Korea itself. So similarly, even people have to look out whether they do really have some links directly or indirectly through the US bank or not. So these are some obvious questions we need to ask and inquire before entering into such sensitive transaction matters. Okay, coming to the main topic, voice phishing or vishing. This has been the same kind of cyber crime itself, where particularly they focus on the telephonic system, and they use the socially engineering. Social engineering means manipulating the society with their convincing ways, and there are many modes which I shall be discussing just after this. So through this, they try to make try to obtain or get the access of the personal or financial information of the public, and they try to steal their money out of this. So first they try to exploit the trust of the people over these telephonic system, and they try to obtain the information like this. The purpose here is like in order to be not tracked by any source, these scammers use some email or regular phone or some fake websites. And apart from this, these wishers, voice phishing scammers, particularly do the internet telephone, they use the internet telephone service, not actual telephone service. And the benefit of this is that these telephone services not properly being tracked, and they can be, through the use of different programmings, they can be made some scanning proof, so that they cannot be easily tracked. And after this, they make the call to the victims, and they make some, scaring tactics. Like I said in the previous example, that they said that if we don't follow them, then they may block our account temporarily. So like this, they will try to scare, or they will try to do some emotional manipulation, like making some donation for some NGO or something like this. They will do, and this is how they will somehow trick and obtain your personal information, or they may convince you to make some transaction. So like this, they, and even like I said, they use the programmings. They even use the programmings which are basically the caller ID spoofing, where even their actual identities are not being detected very well. And the ultimate purpose of doing this entire job is just to steal the money or your identity, or both. Okay, coming to the example, as I said, uh, uh, one example is like your account has been compromised. It has got some, some defect, some problem, and they are asking for resetting your password. So that may get steal. They may offer some free price. They may ask for some exaggerated form of the credit or loan. They may ask for some job offer. They may ask for some investment opportunities, some charitable trust they can represent, or some extended warranty scams where they may ask for your phone or the laptop or some other equipment's extended warranty. And through this, they may lure you to make the payments for their policy. And the last one, which is coming very common in recent years, but not getting reported much, is the love trap. So I'll be discussing about them in the later pages. Okay, coming to the type of scammers, like they represent themselves as some CEO, like I said, CEO, CFO, the senior officials of the company, the HR of the company, any government official, tax or insurance company officials, or the some lottery event manager, some social site security check team, who like maybe your Facebook security check or WhatsApp security check, something like that. Um, uh, you know, uh, some kind of victim who is in urgent need of financial help, so they may represent themselves like this. I'm very much sure that in one or the other time you might have received such emails by some maybe into your spam also, for the people who are seeking for some urgent financial need. Or the last one, like I said, the partner or the lover scam, where the scammers, they try to first register to some social dating site, and there through the emotional trap, they try to trap some boy or girl. And after trapping them into their fake love story, they try to convince them to make some payment kind of thing. And like this, they try to steal their money. Okay, so coming to the type of victims that usually we come across, because this is something we more important for us to be known, that how what basically the victims are. So we have in general categorized them into two types: the direct victims and the indirect victims. Direct victims are those who are directly contacted by the scammers, and these victims are basically the people of 40s and 50s of age, who are less aware of the technology, or the people who are less social. They are not much aware of the social events these days. And people who are uneducated of current crime affairs, the people who are unsuspecting by nature, means they are more positive in nature, or the people who are emotionally sensitive, like the charity or love traps, or they basically target to cause the direct financial loss to these people. Coming to the indirect victims, they are basically, they get plotted by those scammers, and they use these people mostly on the name of online jobs or field jobs, or some NGO volunteering jobs, to of some legitimate organization, to achieve their phishing crimes directly, these crimes directly through the direct victims, I mean to say. So like especially the people who come into this categories, those who are job seekers for their basic or urgent financial needs, people who are less social in nature, like if we talk about some students who are less social in nature, or who are uneducated similarly for the current affairs, the people who overestimate the security that any countries. I give you the example of South Korea itself, where people many a times assume that the it is one of the safest country in the world, so such crimes will not be much, the feasibility of such crimes is very less. Or the people who are unsuspecting in nature and they are over positive. And these are as per the report, these indirect victims are mostly the job seekers, newly job seekers, or the students. And they target the scammers target these people to execute their transfer of fund. Or I'll give some examples, the live examples. So they execute the transfer of funds, or they use them to carry their blames of the crime. And these people particularly belong to the underdeveloped countries, where the people are very less aware of such phishing crimes. There is a reason behind, because in those countries the average economically rich population is much less. So the people who want to scam, they need more rich population, from whom they can steal the money, more and more money. And second is, the places or the country where the rate of such smart or high tech crimes are comparatively very less, because in underdeveloped countries people have more other option and easy options to steal the money on the on maybe on gunpoint or something. So they don't need a huge effort and educative form of crime, or the high technology crime like this. So because of this, the people coming from these underdeveloped countries are less aware of such crimes, and therefore they become more prone to such kind of crimes. Okay, so the main causes of this phishing is like the misleading emails. If we don't have we don't check the source of the address, like the one example I gave, the vulnerability of the browsers being used. If we are not using much strong authentication for the websites of bank or the financial institutions, the limited use of digital signatures, non-availability of secure desktop tools, softwares, or any the scanning tools, or the lack of awareness among the people, and the vulnerability of the application that you are using for your financial transactions. Okay, coming to, we have just talked about these cyber crimes, and particularly the voice phishing. So the steps that can be taken to avoid this phishing crime is, first is the social responses itself. We need to be socially very alertive. And if such thing occurs, because nothing you get for free. So if you get anything like this, you need to ask yourself once, or if you get a doubt, value that doubt, and do allow that doubt to grow, and at least inquire, just to authenticate that whatever you are going to deal with is something right or not. So first is the social responses that we need to aware of, awareing other people also, educating other people also around you. Second is the technical approaches, using the legitimate site, the browsers alerting users that the fraudulent people use, the eliminating the phishing emails, and monitoring and taking down the notes and accounts, maybe into your memory or in the form of notes. But noticing such fake things, and letting the others also know that such things may also occur. So trying to be sensitive towards it. And last is, if somebody is facing such problem, he has to try, so he can also take the legal approaches. So I shall be talking quite in brief in the coming pages. So effect of phishing, like I said, there is internet fraud, you get some identity theft, some financial loss, or even the law enforcement investigations find it difficult for means in these investigations are difficult in case of phishing crimes, because like I said, they are borderless, and even their address, URL address, or other ID things, they cannot be easily scanned or searched for. And uh, there are very higher chances that because of this lack of investigative approaches, there are chances that the person himself, the victim himself, could be blamed, and they can be detained for such crimes. And the last one is the of course, the by such crimes only the people are losing their trust on the internet. Okay, coming to the voice phishing in Korea, because we are living in this country, and I just want to give a small introduction of the voice phishing in Korea. So, the South Korea is counted among the highest in the voice phishing crimes in the entire world. And the cases are increasing every year. Just for your introduction, in 2018, the victims were around 48,743, and the total loss that suffered was 444 billion won, which is around 82% of what happened in the previous year. And not just that, if you see in 2019, the scale from 2018, you can see that it is 639 billion won, which is again an increased one. And in the subsequent year, again, it is 700 billion won. And in this is up till 2020. Then in 2021 and 2022, again, the cases are increasing to an enormous pace, and their graph is, increasing in a steep pace. So, and these days, as per the report from which I have taken these figures, they try to victimize particularly the young people who are in need of money with some cheaper interest rate, or maybe for the job opportunities. Okay, so I'll just come up with some, case study that I have taken, and the first case study is my own case. Like in the introduction itself, it might have been told to you that I'm also a victim of the same scam. So I'll just introduce in brief about this. So, like, there was some problem to my scholarship, and due to this, my professor said that I can temporarily, till the new scholarship is not getting resumed, I can search for some part-time job, and he will allow me for this. So I tried to search on different portals, and because I don't speak Korean, so I was searching for some job who are seeking the English speaker, and the Korean is not compulsion in those jobs. So I tried to search on many, on Facebook, different pages like Jobs in Korea, and the Indians community in Korea, IIK. So like this, there were many Facebook pages. So there were job postings, many a times I saw. So I tried to search on those portals. So there were some factory jobs, and one of the job was this. So because the factory job was asking for this the Korean language, but here in this job, as the advertisement, you can see the language is not compulsion. And so like this, they offered. I tried to approach the advertiser of this. So that person gave me the details of the company. She gave me the website of the company, and she also told me the profile of the company. So it was, they said that it is some furniture making company, and they do the wholesaling of the company, and the name of the company is the Crystal A&T. And she shared me the link of the website. I clicked on the website, and I also saw that it seemed to be very much very a genuine website. And she told me the entire recruitment procedure of how I have to go to the career option of the website. Then I have to fill up the form. I have to share my CV. After sharing CV, I was asked to they said that if I'm getting shortlisted, I'll be contacted for the interview. So after 2 days, I received the email that I have got shortlisted, and the HR will be contacting me for the interview. Then the HR contacted me. He took a proper interview of mine, knowing about my entire history, that why, what I was doing in India, and what I'm doing in Korea, and why do I need this job. All these things he asked, and then he again explained the job profile of the company. He gave the position called the credit recovery officer, where I have to go and meet different customers of the company, and if the customers may pay online or offline, and in case of online, I have to take the bills of the company, or get the signatures of the customer and bring it to the company. Is in case of offline payment, I have to receive the payment from the company and bring it to the payment from the customers and bring it to the company people. So like this, so this is a kind of the indirect crime, where they are making you somehow to get involved, to go and approach the reach to the direct victims and get their money and give it to the company representative. They after the interview, after 1 or 2 days, I also received a job confirmation by them. You can see the email. So like this, they gave the confirmation, and there are where they will if you can see on the right side, they will also write about the 1 month probation period, after which they will provide you all the visa documentation and everything in general, which all multinational companies do, that they give you the visa assistance. So here also, because I have opted for a part-time job, so they will be giving me the letter and other things to submit to my university, and to submit it to my the immigration office, to inform that I'm doing for these 2-3 months, I'm doing this part-time job. So like this, they assured, and they started, they made us to work. So like this it happened, and I started working on the company, and after 20 serving for 22 days, suddenly some police official came, and they asked me for my details. I gave them all my details and company ID proof and everything, and but they told me that the company is fake and fraud, and but as the even maybe because of the communication gap also, I was not able to speak and explain much into Korean language. So I tried to explain with the translator, and the Google Translator, and I told them that this is the company and this is how they hired me, and I have to come and I have to serve this company like this. So, but anyhow, they could not understood, or they just arrested me. They made a report on me, and they presented me to the court, and they just made a very simple report showing me as a part of the company. So they just a part of the scammer company, and they blamed me, and I was by the order of the court, I was detained by this, and all my belongings were taken from me. But and because of communication gap, I could not communicate and tell anything. I was trying to explain, and I gave all the evidences, but I could not understand why those evidences were not, put into the file by the police and other things. The case report was very simple, that I'm serving this company and I'm going to different customers, and I'm dealing their documents or the cash payment, and I'm bringing and handing over to the company company representative to the in the company office. So this is how they kept doing, but. Later on, I contacted my embassy. Through embassy, my family contacted, and they hired an English spoken lawyer. And that lawyer came, and I explained everything to him. He understood, and he took even police took my phone, and they were not the prosecutor and the police. They were not giving my phone back to the my lawyer, so that the evidences could be extracted. So I wrote a letter to the judge, and my lawyer also wrote the letter, that if in such cases, I will consider that I'm not given equal opportunity to fight for justice. So this letter reached to the judge, and the judge immediately gave order to prosecutor, and they gave order to give my phone to my lawyer. So like this, my phone was given to lawyer, and then it became very easy for my lawyer to extract all the evidences, and the evidences were presented to the court. And the court saw the evidences, and they also questioned to the prosecutor and police that why these evidences were not included in the report. And it was asked to me whether I gave the evidences or not. So I told them that I gave it. So ultimately, the court ordered for my immediate release from the detention, and they said that they accepted that I'm also a victim of the same voice phishing crimes. So this is how my example happened. So because it happened with me, I wanted more in brief, because I can explain better, as I went through all this, so I could explain you better. Coming to the second example, in a very short, he's also, I after this, I started meeting more and more people to spread awareness among the people, and also tried to, reach the victims of such scams, and try to help in every possible way, whatever I could from my side. So this guy is also an Indian guy. He also got such, posting, and the company came out to be the same company. They also provided him an offer letter like this, you can see over your screen, and he was also similarly scammed by the same company. The only you can see that the job position given to them was a different, and here also they are asking very professionally, like 1 month probation period and all those stuff. Coming to the third case, this was also for a girl who got trapped by, it is an example of the direct victim, where the love trap example, the thing happened where, the kind of examples where, the cases go unreported to a major extent. Even after suffering from financial fraud, the people do not report, because because of their, personal identity. So either it is boy or girl, so they don't come into light for this. So the in dating site also, somehow, the boy or the girl, they approach the second person, and they, take the person, share the personal information like Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. Then they start dating each other, then, somehow grabbing the second person into emotional trap. And then even for identity, you can see that, he is giving his barcode details, or even his passport detail kind of things, he's sharing with that person. And because even the college students are not matured enough to, you know see these things very sensitively, or very, very seriously, so they get trapped into such thing. And they ultimately, such guy, like this guy, he tried to convince the girl that he's trying to send some precious gift for her from New York. And it has got stuck into custom, and the custom office wants some, fund to be transferred for the clearance of the gift, precious gift. So like this, they convinced the girl, and the girl started, making the payment one time. Then he gave an excuse for second time, the third time, and like this, he stole around 7 million from that girl, and from by doing so. Yeah, and she's again a PhD student in Korea itself, in Seoul. So this is another example, and this is one intentionally I gave the fourth example. He's a Nepalese boy only, and he also suffered from similar crime, like the one I said that, they sometimes they make he this is also a kind of indirect victim, where, they make the direct victims to transfer the fund into some account. So instead of giving their own account, they first give their account to different, they hire these indirect victims on some commission based job for the students, like you can see over your screen. And they say, you can read that, they say that your job will be 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., and it can be done from anywhere. You don't have to come to office. And you can, you have to, it is only that there are some customers of the, you have to manage the customers, their deposits and remittance of the deposit to the partners who are outside the Korea, particularly in Asia. And most of such, scammers are operating like, I will give you, some notes about it. So the Interpol has tried to detect, and some of these scammers are, particularly based on the Chinese land. And, they are offering that every time that boy, the victim will transfer the money, he will get 50,000 won for as a commission on the daily basis. So like this, they try to scam. Okay, coming finally to the these measures we can take against such crimes. So the first and foremost important thing is we need to be alerted, and we need to prevent any such phishing attack before it happens to us or to anybody else known to you. And we should try to detect it is a world of technology, so we should try to use some web tools to identify the such emails or some website, or by directly contacting the company or the organization which that person is the scammer is trying to refer, or trying to cross question the scammer, try to take the validations from the scammer, so that if he's scamming, he will not be able to entirely satisfy you over your questions and validation, unless and until you keep on doing doubting on him or her. So this, then you should discuss the people around you. Don't be introvert. Introvert in the sense that at least for even if somebody is introvert for their official or some these kind of banking thing or the study related thing, they do discuss their matters with other people to take the knowledge. So they should take it in that sense only, that by discussing, they are just trying to take knowledge from other people, their experience or their suggestions of such incident if they are going to face such thing. They should prevent the delivery of such phishing message to other people as well, preventing any phishing message or sites. Any counter measure to be taken if somebody has already suffered through it, he should take the counter measure by consulting the some reasonable people, some legal approaches he can take, and also through the awareness to the people, he can take the measures. And of course, always try to stop or interfere to the situations or environment where your personal information is going to be compromised, and never ever send any money or any personal information to the people or companies who are unfamiliar to you. And last, being in Korea, it is better to learn some basic language to interact with the Korean society, because many of the Korean society, actually I should say most people in Korean society, they are well aware of this voice phishing crimes, because they are being victim of such crimes from past 20 years, more than 20 years, I should say. So they are aware of this. So, and in that case, the language barrier due to will be a big hurdle if we need the awareness among from the people. Okay, what all measures, because I gave my own examples, I am trying to make you aware of it. What all measures I took from my side, I'm just letting you know in brief. The evidences, what all evidences I had, I collected all the evidences, whatever possible for me, and from other sources, and I presented to the court. Because I said I have a, the language was the biggest barrier for me, maybe because of which I could not properly explain to the police, or they could not understand. And so I intentionally hired a Korean lawyer, but he was an English spoken lawyer. And there is an Indian community who provided me that lawyer. So he was the first person who understood me very well. And I explained him every situation, and he said that we will fight and will come up through this. So the either we should learn the language, or if I wish that it never happens to anybody, but if in such cases occur around you also, so the best approach is to hire somebody, or who is who with whom your language will never be a barrier, and you can explain him into the best way you can. So, and I gave full support and consent to court. When the court, after my judgment, court also asked me that, can they use my personal information to spread in the Korean media? So I gave my support and consent to the court uh, for the awareness, because ultimately it will be beneficial for the communities, whether it is belonging to my community, any international community. So it is Indian, the Nepalese or the Bangladeshi or any community from the underdeveloped countries. Okay, so I also informed the concerned ministries and offices in India to alert them and aware. With the evidences, I dropped them email so that more. I thought that more and more students could be aware through this, and I kept a constant communication throughout my process with Indian Embassy through proper updates and initiatives. I also informed the government agencies like the Ministry of Justice, the Human Rights Commission of Korea, and the Interpol with the interference of Indian Embassy. And I also tried to approach the community organizations, like I said, the Indian community, and I have already met many of the SONSIK members, and I have tried to, sensitize them over this, and similarly the Pakistan community and many more. And with the help of certain NGOs also. I think you are aware of the UCC, and there is another Guangzhou-based organization, GIC. So through them also, I try to aware more and more people, also from Philippines and Vietnam. And so far, like I just told you, I have spread awareness, tried to spread among the Nepalese, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian, Korean, and Malaysian community. And I'm also just trying to learn more, a little, some to a basic of the Korean language. Okay, so just coming to my last page, that the conclusion, that these voice phishings are they're specific forms of the internet crimes that are, and the internet users are more vulnerable to it if they are not properly trained of using the internet sources well, and they are not aware of the immense danger of its negative effect. And the foreigners who are, especially the needy students and job seekers from underdeveloped countries, they are more prone to such indirect victimization type of voice phishing scam. And like I said, there is a very much difficult, it is very much difficult to make the investigation and apply some law onto it, because even Korea is also evolving to apply some enforcement. But as of now, even uh, they are not very much clear about how to handle such cases, because like I said, even the address you say, or the computer, or the ID or the email, whatever it is very difficult to scam in case of these online crimes. And like I said, the Korean language is one of the big barrier. So we should adjust with that language as well. And there is not a particular single technology or method through which you can stop phishing at all, even till, at least till today. And though we can, with a combination of some awareness, conscious among people, being doubting or suspecting, and try to have a preventive deceptive interactions, good organization and practice, proper application of current technology or the softwares, and to improve the security systems. And it can potentially reduce the phishing crimes and whatever the losses a person suffer from it. These are some of the references that I used, including the direct consultations with the victims whom I have met. That's all for my presentation, and I have just given a tagline for everyone for these crimes, like be aware, be socially interactive, be conscious, be alerting and reporting, and be preventive. So have a safe and bright future ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really meaningful for us, and we are Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, and your presentation is really meaningful for us. And do you, Manish, brother?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me, Manish? No, I am sorry. I am talking about Manish.
Yes,
Can you
sure.
hear me with Manish? Manish, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you check chat? Is there any question or not? Can you check that on chat and the SONSIK page chat? You can check, and can you do we have any question or not?
So there is no question in chat.
Yeah.
So I think we should turn off the Facebook Live, and
Yeah,
so
okay,
that
sure.
we can do unofficial talks. So
Yeah,
there might
sure.
be a lot of question.
Yeah.
Okay, then okay, yeah, that's also a good reason. Okay, then just turn up that one. Then we will talk about this thing.